If I could hand my younger self a letter, it wouldn't be a stock tip or a secret app download. It would be a short stack of lessons that make an ordinary week cheaper to run and a future easier to afford. For years, I chased clever ideas and ignored boring structures. I tried to budget by mood, to save with pep talks, to invest on headlines. It worked for a month until life raised its voice. What finally changed everything wasn't a windfall. It was a series of lessons that turned my money from a personality test into plumbing. They're simple, they're stubborn, and they still work when I'm tired. Here are the 10 I wish I'd learned sooner, told as a story you can step into, with examples you can steal tonight. The first lesson is that paying yourself last is code for paying yourself never. I used to wait until the end of the month to see what was left. What was left was usually good intentions. The fix was not more discipline, it was automation. I routed income into a quiet staging account with no card attached and scheduled 4 transfers on dates I wouldn't forget. On payday, money left for savings and long-term investing before lifestyle heard the news. In the first week, fixed bills drafted from a separate bills account so Drift couldn't spawn late fees. The day after payday, small transfers dripped into tiny buckets for irregulars that are actually predictable: tires, co-pays, gifts, school events, licenses, December, and every Friday, a weekly card refilled for groceries and ordinary life, so Drift lasted no more than 6 days. That choreography turned one unforgiving month into 4 recoverable weeks. Paying myself first stopped being a slogan and became a calendar event. The result felt suspicious at first. Fridays grew boring. Eventually, I realized that boring was the sound of wealth being built indoors. The second lesson is that the cheapest luxury in personal finance is a sleep fund. Call it an emergency fund if you want to feel virtuous. Call it a sleep fund if you want to use it. A small wall of cash turns disasters into errands. The amount matters less than the habit. I started with 1 month of essentials and climbed toward 3 to 6 as life expanded and income got spikier. I kept it at a bank I didn't otherwise use, so impulse had to cross a street to reach it. I aligned insurance deductibles to its balance, so one bad week couldn't bulldoze a whole year. The weird magic of a sleep fund is how it makes everything else easier. You can keep investing during market storms. You can negotiate repairs instead of financing panic. You can say no to bad opportunities because you're not borrowing confidence from a lender. The sleep fund doesn't make you rich directly. It keeps you in the game long enough for compounding to do the job. The third lesson is that the bank's approval is not your budget. It's the bank's appetite. When I let a lender decide how much house or car I could afford, I was outsourcing my savings rate to a sales funnel. Right-sizing the roof and the wheels did more for my finances than a decade of couponing. A home sized for oxygen gave me a kitchen that could actually cook, a calendar that didn't wheeze, and a savings rate that existed even on average months. A reliable used car with a term shorter than its life removed theatrical anxiety from my driveway and converted identity payments into ownership contributions. Nobody on my street applauded. My future self did, quietly, every Friday. If you feel broke despite a decent income, audit your roof and your wheels before judging your coffee. The fourth lesson is that improvisation is expensive, especially at dinner time. I used to believe I was overspending because I lacked discipline. In truth, I was just hungry and tired in a home that required 30 decisions to make a meal. I kept 2 default 10-minute dinners in the house at all times: eggs on toast with fruit, pasta with jarred sauce, frozen vegetables, and a grating of hard cheese, and 1 small Sunday batch turned 4 weeknights into assembly. Deliveries stopped impersonating relief. This isn't culinary advice, it's financial infrastructure. A kitchen that works turns treat yourself into a choice instead of a tax. My grocery bill shrank because the number of emergencies fell to nearly 0. The dinners weren't thrilling, my bank balance was. The fifth lesson is that attention is a budget. Tired brains buy relief at surge pricing and sell assets in storms. I moved my phone charger out of the bedroom and stole back my mornings. Water, sunlight, 3 lines in a notebook, a 5-minute state check on my accounts. I moved shopping apps 2 screens deep and put my notes, reading, or broker app on page 1 as a cue. I unsubscribed from brand emails I never signed up for and replaced them with a handful of newsletters that teach me skills I can sell. I installed a waiting period, 24 hours for small wants, 30 days for toys, and parked every desire in a cooling off queue note with dates. Half of those carts expired without drama, the other half improved. It turned out I didn't need willpower to buy less, I needed fewer invitations to want more. When inputs got quieter, so did my spending. The sixth lesson is that debt is not a character flaw, it's a calendar problem. Shame made me hide from balances and pay randomly. Schedules made me free. I automated every minimum in the first week, so late disappeared. I chose one target balance and added a steady, survivable extra every payday until it expired. If math motivated me, I attacked the highest APR. If momentum motivated me, I knocked up the smallest balance first and rolled the payment. I matched loan terms to the life of the asset where possible and avoided rates that could change faster than my cash could adapt. The difference was not heroic discipline, it was predictability. When debt became a schedule instead of a mood, it shrank. When it shrank, my capacity for boring investing grew. The seventh lesson is that complex rarely beats clear in investing. I used to think the smart move was picking the next winner. Then I learned how often professionals fail to beat the market after fees and how many clever products rely on your confusion. I wrote a 1-page investing policy in my own words so noise couldn't hijack my hands. It says what I own, broad, low-cost index funds that buy tiny pieces of thousands of businesses across sectors and borders, plus a bond sleeve I can sleep with, how much I add on payday, when I rebalance, birthday and half-birthday with a 5-point band, what I do with distributions, reinvest while building, what I do with employer stock, sell as it vests by rule, keep any single name tiny, and what I do when prices fall by a third. Keep contributing, rebalance once, and go for a walk. That page isn't a flex, it's a seatbelt. A dull plan I obey beats an exciting plan I negotiate with every time the headlines catch fire. The eighth lesson is that subscriptions love fog, and fog is expensive. I ran a quarterly rebuy test. I sat with a mug, read each recurring charge out loud, and asked one question. Would I buy this again today at this price? If the answer wasn't a clean yes, I canceled or paused and routed the freed dollars to sinking funds with names that made me grin. December tickets, tires and service, gifts, travel trains, deductible. December stopped pretending to be an emergency. So did birthdays and tires. The test wasn't about self-denial, it was about visibility. When money has assignments, it stops disappearing into the fog and starts building things you can point at. The ninth lesson is that maintenance is a money habit, not a chore list. Filters, oil, caulk, descaling the kettle, a squeegee on the shower, backing up files, rotating tires, tightening a wobble, sharpening knives. None of this pictures well. All of it prints money. Emergencies charge surge pricing in money, time, and dignity. Errands are cheap. I gave myself a Sunday maintenance hour and treated it like a standing appointment with my future. My home became a quiet machine that didn't need to be replaced every season. My car was a tool, not a drama. My laptop lasted long enough to be boring. I'm unlucky melted into I have a calendar. The 10th lesson is that income grows faster when you keep receipts for outcomes, not hours. I used to hope managers would notice my effort. Hope is not a strategy, arithmetic is. I opened a note titled Receipts, outcomes. And whenever I shipped something useful, I wrote it down with numbers. Dollars saved by a process I improved. Errors prevented by a checklist I wrote. Revenue created by a demo I shipped. Days shaved by a redesign I led. Risk removed by a better handoff. Every 9 to 12 months, I traded those receipts for title, rate, or flexibility. If my room couldn't count, I took my receipts to a room that could. When increases landed, I routed them through my rails for 90 days before Lifestyle heard the news. The sleep fund got fat, contributions bumped a notch, sinks filled, a target balance died, and one designed joy was funded, so my nervous system stayed on board. Income growth became a system, not a wish. That system compounded faster than any coupon I ever clipped.
Here's how those lessons behave in real rooms, because theory that can't survive a Tuesday is decoration. A 23-year-old barista routes weekly pay into staging on Friday. The same day, a small slice leaves for her sleep fund at a bank she doesn't otherwise use, and a tiny investing transfer buys a low-cost index fund. Fixed bills draft in the first week because staging parked half the rent from each of the first 2 Fridays. 2 default dinners live in her freezer. Delivery becomes celebration food. She keeps a receipts note, minutes saved per shift after reorganizing syrups and milks, errors prevented after a new closing checklist, and asks for a raise with proof. It lands. The raise vanishes into rails for 90 days. Her Friday is boring in the best way. She isn't lucky, she's scheduled. A 39-year-old engineer with equity comp looks rich on paper and wrecked on Tuesdays. He writes a 1-page investing policy, sells employer stock as it vests by rule, skims a slice to taxes immediately, and holds a ballast sleeve so screens can scream without moving his hands. He and his partner set an ask-first threshold and keep no-questions allowances. They run a 10-minute weekly check-in to replace fights with logistics. They right-size the roof at renewal and move 3 bus stops closer to their life. Their savings rate rises not because they became frugal, but because they removed expensive chaos. Their home stops being a museum and becomes a workshop. Their weekends produce rest instead of receipts. A tradeswoman with a wait list and lumpy months separates business and household money. She pays herself a safe number every Friday and smooths income with a buffer. She productizes chaos, clear offers with scope, price, and timeline, same-day quotes with an expiration, deposits and milestone invoices, a 5-second review link, and a pause clause when payments lag. Every invoice skims to taxes, buffer, and investing. She builds a trunk kit, fasteners, tape, gloves, spare blade, flashlight. So one missing part stops becoming one unpaid day. Profit rises faster than revenue because leakiness dies. She borrows specialized tools before buying them, which makes her feel rich because her network becomes a catalog. The lesson hiding here is that stewardship compounds. So does community. A caregiver with a modest salary and high stakes can't move, so she redraws geography on paper. 1 car day, batched errands, a cooler bag and charger in the trunk, a 5-mile rule for essentials. The library becomes Saturday by default. Ebooks, audiobooks, museum passes, quiet rooms, printing. She tunes insurance to reality, aligns deductibles with her buffer, and invests a small automatic amount on payday into broad funds she can sleep with. She hosts soup night twice a month and funds it in a tiny sink, so generosity doesn't fight groceries. Her budget doesn't look extreme, it looks lived in. The lesson is that proximity is profit, and hospitality can be frugal without being stingy. A student who feels perma-broke routes $10 from each campus paycheck to a sleep fund because identity matters more than amount. She keeps a $25 weekly card so drift can't last longer than 6 days, builds a small uniform from thrifted quality pieces, batch cooks with roommates, borrows before buying anything she'll use fewer than 4 times a year, and keeps a cooling-off queue for wants. She builds a tiny portfolio of outcomes, hours saved by a spreadsheet, errors reduced by a checklist, and lands a better campus job by showing proof. Her numbers are small, Her slope is undeniable. Learning slope early is worth more than guessing the right stock once. I wish I'd also known that generosity belongs in the plan from the beginning, a small, scheduled percentage that leaves every month to people and causes you care about, plus a tiny spontaneous help fund inoculates you against performative spending and scarcity binges. When giving has a lane, you stop buying identity at checkout screens to feel like a good person. Your week cooperates because your values have a budget line, not just a hope. I wish I'd learned sooner that insurance and taxes are not extra. They are the moat around your plan. Insure what you cannot afford to lose. Health coverage matched to how you actually use care. Term life if someone depends on your income. Disability insurance for your earning power. An umbrella policy over home and auto. Align deductibles to your buffer. For taxes, if you're salaried, check withholding when life changes. If you're independent, skim a percentage of every invoice into a taxes bucket the day it lands and set nudges for quarterlies. April becomes a report, not a crisis. Plans fail at the unphotogenic edges. Guard the edges and the plan survives. I wish I'd learned that never miss twice is the sentence that protects all of this. You will blow a week. You will miss a transfer in a chaotic month. You will raid the sleep fund for a real emergency. You will hear a headline that begs your hands to do something loud. The difference between people who restart every January and people who compound for decades is repair speed. If you miss, resume on payday. If you overspend, trim next week. If the buffer takes a hit, refill it before anything else. If markets scream, obey your policy and go for a walk. Recovery beats perfection. Rhythm beats drama. Calendars beat moods. What about fun? It fits. In fact, it works better on purpose. I keep one small, yes, on purpose fund every month for joy I won't regret. Pizza night with friends, a train day trip, a book I will finish, ingredients for a recipe that makes me feel competent. Funding it in advance turns pleasure into design instead of sabotage. Frugal is not stingy. Frugal is generous to the parts of you that need care and structure so the rest of your life can hum. If you want a ceremony you can finish tonight, keep it small and real. Rename one account as Staging Rails and another Sleep Fund. Schedule 4 transfers, savings and investing on payday, bills and minimums in the first week, tiny sinks the day after payday with names that make you grin, December, tires and service, gifts, travel trains, copays, and a weekly refill every Friday for groceries and ordinary life. Move your phone charger out of the bedroom. Choose 2 10-minute dinners and put their ingredients in your kitchen. Start a receipts note with the last useful thing you did at work and the dollar value you can defend. Run a 15-minute subscription rebuy test and cancel one that fails. Write a 1-page investing policy in words you understand and tape it where panic can find it. Then let Friday arrive and notice the most undervalued sensation in personal finance: nothing. The refill hits, the bills draft, the sinks drip, and you feel nothing because the plan already knows what to do. A few weeks from now, your home won't look like a magazine. Good, magazines don't pay your bills. What you will notice is a texture that was missing before: calm. The card refills without drama. The kitchen carries a bad Wednesday. Your inbox is quieter. Your car starts. Your portfolio buys tiny pieces of thousands of businesses on dates, not moods. December behaves. Tires behave. Emergencies behave. Pay raises route through rails for 90 days before lifestyle hears the news. The voice in your head stops saying, "I'm bad with money," and starts saying, "I'm a steward." That word matters because stewards fix, maintain, borrow, share, and invest. They take good care of what they have so they can afford the future they want. These 10 lessons weren't glamorous when I learned them. They were repetitive. They still are. That's why they work. Wealth is not an event. It's a week that keeps its promises again and again while no one is watching. Learn the lessons now, even imperfectly, and your future self will send you a letter you'll actually want to read. Thank you. You made my Tuesdays easier than your Tuesdays were.